Mexico in the 50s and 60s. In the 50s, Mexico went through a powerful process of modernization, rapid and sustained economic growth that created an urban and industrial society in contrast with the traditional one. World War II gave rise to the so-called Mexican economic miracle. To begin with some of the events from this decade, we should remark on the era of the golden age of Mexican cinema. This period is recognized because the Mexican film industry reached high levels of production, quality, and accumulated tons of money apart from getting recognition internationally. During the Second World War, the film industry in the US and Europe declined as they were using all the resources for the arms industry, but Mexico instead took advantage of this situation to produce commercial films for the Mexican and Latin American markets. This cultural environment favored the emergence of new generation of directors and actors considered to date icons. Now, Miguel Covarrubias, actually the pioneer of modern caricature in Mexico. He inaugurated a dance academy to represent a modern style of dance called contemporary Mexican dance. He also created a type of magazine series called Impossible Interviews, in which two icons with completely different ideologies were having a talk. For example, here we find Schiaparelli having a discussion with the Soviet Union political leader Stalin. Also at that time, Ramon Valdiosera, Mexican designer, writer, and filmmaker, created a new trend through a color he called Rosa Mexicana and associated it with Mexican culture. This pink color was being used in everything such as ornaments, in dresses, or logos in establishments. Now, let's talk about Ernesto Garcia Cabral, the Chango, an artist, painter, and icon of Mexican Art Deco and Nouveau, famous for his contributions as a cartoonist to the magazine Revista de Revistas. Now, talking about magazines in the 50s, Madame, a monthly publication oriented to women but only led by men. Curious, right? And Vanidades appeared during the same decade and is still a very popular magazine in Latin America. Fashion in the 50s incorporated history, religion, music, and Mexican culture into the clothing. There was a predominance of the use of color, textures with polka dots, stripes, and flowers, highlighting a very feminine style. Now, talking about the real stars of this time, Dolores del Rio and Lupe Vélez. They were two of the most important actresses and sexual symbols of the golden age of Mexican cinema, as they were the first Mexicans that made it to Hollywood. Their success in the US didn't even make them friends at all, as they had certain rivalry between each other. Also see the first representation of fashion in Mexico through cinema in the movie Doña Diabla, starring Maria Felix, a Mexican film legend who became iconic to date. Let's now talk about the Rupture movement. This social movement began with painters that rejected social realism and nationalism and incorporated surrealism, visual paradoxes, and elements of all world painting styles. One of the first representatives was José Luis Cuevas, who made self-portraits recreating scenes from famous paintings by Spanish artists like Goya or Picasso. Music in Mexico was a bang. Mariachi music was one of the most popular in the 50s. The roots of this type of music goes 100 years ago. It was the music of country people, music that celebrated the joys, the struggles, and the triumphs of the Mexican people. Ranchera music, a fast-paced music that gained popularity among the youth. The main topics were mainly love, patriotism, and nature. This actually helped to spread corrido music, that is a variation of ranchera music but with a faster pace to satisfy the trend of the vibrating hits of the time. Mexican cumbia also deserves mention. When the Colombian artist Luis Carlos Meyer Constadet created the first cumbia, this genre became very famous in Mexico. 1951 and the Mexico's peace movement. The tension in the war between the US and the Soviet Union from politics, art, and military issues caused some artists such as Frida Kahlo to begin a series of still life paintings to collect a list of signatures in support of the peace movement. In the same year, the Mexican government asked Diego Rivera to paint an important mural, The Nightmare of War and the Dream of Peace. It was a statement for global peace and a commentary on war. Another important Mexican muralist was David Alfaro Siqueiros, together with his two murals, Apotheosis of Cuauhtemoc, where the Aztec emperor led his people to defeat the Spanish army, and The Torment of Cuauhtemoc, showing the reality of the Spanish army destroying the Aztecs. The Chicano movement. This movement comes from the civil rights movements in the 50s in America. The Mexican college students in the US pushed universities to address Mexican American women's issues and to stop discrimination. In architecture, though, the friendship between Walter Gropius, one of the founders of the Bauhaus, and Max Seto, a famous Mexican architect, led to the opening of basic courses in the architecture schools of Mexico. 53 and some important designers. Julio Chavez, called the stylist of the stars, he left his mark in the performance world and the revue theaters. The purpose of his creations is to highlight the female figure with fitted designs, rhinestones, and embroidery. He also made the Mexican poncho very popular in the world. Armando Valdez Peza, fashion designer, actor, and writer who created many designs for movies and the divas of the time. His dresses were all over evening gowns and stood out for the rhinestones, the use of tulle on colors such as ivory, black, and gray. Pedro Loredo. He started in the fashion world by launching his first collection of tailored suits for women with hard lapels. His style was very daring, with vaporous dresses, transparencies, and using pre-Hispanic motifs. 1955. This was a very important date in the history of Mexico, as Mexican women acquired the right to vote and went for the first time in history to the polls. Also, in the same year, Frida Kahlo did her last painting, Viva la Vida, Watermelons, showing the short life of Frida and giving a final message to the artist herself. 1957, Diego Rivera, Frida Kahlo's husband, did his last painting, The Watermelons. This painting shows a few vivid watermelons with a very intense texture. We should also remark the magazine Paquita Silvia Pinal Lid as a guide to help women to keep up with the trends in fashion, culture, arts, health, and beauty of the time. As a tragic ending for this year, the three important actors and male icons of the golden years passed away. Pedro Infante, a great actor and so-called immortal icon of ranchera music. Jorge Negrete, one of the founders and most important leaders of the Mexican Actors Association, and also considered a male sex symbol for its society. Arturo de Córdoba, another remarkable figure for Mexican cinema who made over 100 films. Okay, stay with me because in 1958 I would like to mention two important figures. Manuel Rodriguez Lozano, a Mexican painter known for his melancholy representation of Mexico rather than the more popular muralism movement with political and festive models of Mexico. His artwork was very marked by cold colors and tragic scenes focusing on human figures which were looking skeletal. Carlos Fuentes, considered as one of the greatest Mexican novelists, he adopted the name of the Balzac of Mexico to describe himself as a pre-modern writer. His first novel is called Where There Is Claire. He was actually regarded as a leading figure of the Latin American boom, along with Gabriel García Márquez from Colombia, Mario Vargas Llosa from Peru, and Julio Cortázar from Argentina. This literary group of young Latin American novelists became well known throughout the world. So, to end this decade in 1960, I want to highlight new lifestyles. Let's start with Pixie Hawkins, a talented fashion setting singer, actress, and clothing designer that started a wig and eyelash company called Pixie. It was an immediate success that led to the opening of 50 stores throughout Mexico. She used to launch new wigs and lashes every Sunday in comic musical numbers featuring her. Another one, Josefa Ibarra, the Coco Chanel of Mexico. She established her own brand and expanded so well that she got to open boutiques in many US famous department stores. To date, she has been the only Mexican designer to have a cover in Vogue Paris. Last but not least, Pedro Loredo. He was labeled as pornographic and was very recognized for his daring designs that showed more legs and cleavage of the women, making it what we can call a fine fashion. Year, even celebrities like Marilyn Monroe appear wearing a sweater made in the state of Mexico to deny her critics about superficiality. In conclusion, the beginning of the 50s in Mexico had a big international influence based on hippie fashion. How did these people used to wear? It was common to see puff hairstyles, simple makeup, numerous prints, flare pants, or even it was usual to see women with straight cut dresses above the knees. After all, I really hope that you stay with me during this documentary and that you learn a little bit more of the art of Mexico during the 50s. Thank you.